Welcome back to the 11th episode of American Conspiracies. As always, I'm your host Jordan, and this week I'll be discussing the popular and highly publicized case of Amelia Earhart. On July 24th, 1897, one of the world's most famous pilots was born. Amelia Mary Earhart was born in Atchison, Kansas, and graduated from Hyde Park High School later on in her life. According to PBS.org, she decided not to graduate from Ogden School later on in her life because she wanted to volunteer at Toronto Spadina Military Hospital helping World War I soldiers. In 1920, Amelia was taken on her first plane ride, and after that, all she wanted was more. From that point on, it was only uphill from her. She became an extremely successful person, and while learning to fly, Amelia had a variety of jobs to keep up her flight lesson payments, and her first lesson was given by Nita Snook. On May 16, 1923, Amelia Earhart earned her international pilot's license and became the 16th woman to ever accomplish such a feat. She became an unofficial record setter for female pilots and was an advocate for female aviation. After owning a Kinner Airster biplane she dubbed Canary for many years, she decided to go ahead and get another aircraft. This aircraft was a Lockheed Vega 5B. She went on to break and set many records in this aircraft that she affectionately dubbed the Little Red Bus. According to Smithsonian, Earhart sold the aircraft to Philadelphia Franklin Institute in 1933. It was then obtained by Smithsonian in 1966. After selling the Vega 5B to the Franklin Institute, Amelia went and purchased a twin-engine Lockheed 10E Electra with the funds from the Purdue Research Foundation in July of 1936. She continued the tradition of naming her planes and decided to name the 10E Electra the Flying Laboratory. She then had the intention of using this vessel to fly around the world. About a year after obtaining the aircraft, on July 1, 1937, Amelia Earhart took off from Miami to set off her mission to fly around the globe, but of course we all know how that ended. Now, not many people know this, but Amelia Earhart wasn't the only person to disappear on that final dream flight. Accompanying Amelia on her flight was Frederick Joseph Noonan. He was a flight navigator, sea captain, and aviator pioneer. He was more than qualified as an individual to join Amelia on her journey, and while on the flight, he served as her flight navigator. Across the span of a 24-hour day, the two had completed more than 2,200 miles. According to American Experience, they had stopped in South America, Africa, India, and New Guinea. The following day, Earhart and Noonan took off from Lae, New Guinea, where they were on track to arrive at Howland Island. Now, the problem was the fact that the island that they needed to find and land on was rather small and hard to locate. Located in the Pacific Ocean, however, Howland Island is only 13,200 feet long. While trying to make it on the island, the two found themselves lost and unable to successfully find the island they needed to get to. To make matters worse, they lost radio control with a nearby Coast Guard ship, and so therefore they were in dangerous trouble. If they couldn't find the island they needed to land on and reconnect their signal, they were as good as dead. Well, to add another unfortunate layer to this failed mission, apparently the Coast Guard could hear transmissions coming from Amelia's aircraft, but they weren't able to respond to her because of the cut signal. That was the last day that Earhart and Noonan were ever heard from again. Many search parties were sent out, and President Roosevelt even sent out a team to look for the lost explorers, but unfortunately nothing turned up. And it wasn't until January 5, 1939 that Amelia Mary Earhart was declared legally dead in a Los Angeles court. Now that's the thing, legally dead. No remains, no audio, and no wreck evidence, just legally dead. So what could have happened to Amelia and Fred if they didn't die in the wreck? Well, the likelihood of them actually dying from drowning and water intake is probably the most sensible and plausible of ideas, but there are some more gruesome and strange ones to go along. One theory states that Amelia had made an emergency crash landing on the island Nicaroro and became too weak to survive. Therefore, she was attacked by local wildlife and was torn apart by large coconut crabs. This theory is backed by the fact that coconut crabs are omnivorous animals that feed on animal carcasses, skeletons, and tropical fruit. Now, of course, there's more information that debunks this theory. 1. Coconut crabs are generally frightened by humans and prefer to stay away. And 2. Attacks from these creatures are extremely rare, and they only are aggressive when they feel threatened. So, if crabs didn't eat her, then what else could have? Well, there's an absolutely absurd theory that states that she was eaten by her navigator, or that she ate her navigator and then parts of herself before dying from lack of water and blood loss. Yeah, probably not. That's just pure horror fuel. A third and more sensible theory states that the two may have accidentally flown into restricted Japanese airspace and were captured because they were deemed US spies. Eventually, the Japanese may have released them or killed them off, but who really knows? And finally, there's a theory that presents the idea that Amelia Earhart and Frederick Noonan survived. Some believe that they landed somewhere in a remote island and had no choice but to live amongst the people who had took them in and helped them survive. Well, whatever Earhart and Noonan faced after the disappearance will most likely remain a mystery. Did they drown? Were they eaten by bloodthirsty crabs? Were they captured by the Japanese? Or did they survive? And no, aliens were not involved, because I can already hear those conversations circling. Well, that's all I have to share for today. Thank you for tuning in again to another episode of American Conspiracies. Make sure to leave a comment on what you believe happened to Amelia and Frederick, and as always, join me next week when I discuss yet another topic. Make sure you follow the official American Conspiracies Instagram for updates and more, linked in the description down below.